Welcome to the Wayne Bennett Podcast, celebrating West Virginia's people, places, and the culture of Southern Appalachia. Now here's your host, Wayne Bennett.
Welcome to Wayne Bennett's Podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Bennett, and this is episode 159. Our guest today is one of the newest members of the Raleigh County Wrestling Hall of Fame. He is a college teacher. He's been in the military. He's retired from the government. Mr. Stephon Ross, welcome.
Thank you.
Today actually is March the 4th, 2025. It's Fat Tuesday. This is the day that is supposed to party like there's no tomorrow, and tomorrow is Ash Wednesday, and we're supposed to start Lent, period of fasting or giving something up. Have you given anything up, you know?
Not yet. I'm still debating on what it's going to be.
I didn't even know it was Fat Tuesday till I saw it in the paper today, so I'll have to give that some consideration. Your early days, you grew up in East Beckley.
Yes.
And where'd you go to grade school?
I went to Institute.
And did Sylvia School still have a school then?
Yes. When I was going on, it was Sylvia, Lincoln, and Institute. Those are three schools in the city, elementary schools in the city.
Uh-huh. Yes. And you went to junior high, of course, Stratton Junior High.
Yes.
Your dad was an educator. What did your mom do?
She was a secretary and a data processor for a company called E.I. DuPont.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Now, she passed away young, didn't she?
Yes, she was 56. My dad was 58. My mother died in November of 2003, and my father June of 2004.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I remember your dad real well playing softball. He used to play for the Wilkes Insurance Company, and then we played in the basketball league at the Y, and we played at that old Y. Had the small court,
Yeah.
and he played on, I think it was the Beckley Newspapers team, and it was him and his brother Sherman, Billy Wine, and Larry Siner, and Lawrence Burkle. And man, when you played them guys, you took a beating. I mean, you talking about your arms would be bruised and everything, but they were pretty good. They think they won the league the year that I played in that thing. But and then I got the opportunity to coach against Melvin. Where did he go to high school?
He actually went to Stratton High School as well.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he went to Stratton High School.
Now Sherman went to Bird Pillman,
Yeah,
didn't he?
yes.
Pillman.
Yeah, Sherman was older. My dad was the baby. So, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, my mother went to Stratton as well. They had actually met each other. I think my father was like a grade or two ahead of my mother, whatever. But, you know, they had both went their own separate ways, whatever, and came back and ended up, you know, getting together, whatever, married and all that. So.
I think the very first time I met him, he was coaching down at Trap Hill.
Yes.
And he was working a summer crew down at New River Park. Had a bunch of kids working for him. They used to have a program, and that's the first time I had ever met him. I always enjoyed coaching against Melvin because, especially in football, because he always brought his A game. You know, I mean, he was going to play.
Yeah.
He's kind of like me. If you keep a score, you try to win.
Right.
You know?
Yes.
And that's what you expected from him. Now he was in the first group of wrestling coaches for the junior high when they started the junior high program in the county, and I think Stratton won the very first tournament that the county had. And I think Artie Jenkins and a few of those guys were on that team. What about your early years? What was the first organized sport you ever played?
Football, of course. You know,
Did you ever play baseball?
I played baseball up until I was probably about 11 or 12. I played for a team called the Jets and then the Orioles. Mr. Hughes was our coach, and Mr. Mayo.
You talking about Reggie Mayo?
No, his father, William.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
his father.
Mr. Hughes, you're talking about old Albert Hughes, the older Albert?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
He'd been around a while. He coached in Babe Ruth when I was playing. And now, What about football? Who was your coaches in football?
I started out at East Beckley, Mr. Mayo, and he's a Reverend now, Walter Leach. And then my 7th grade year, I couldn't play any sports because I went to Stratton. My school district was supposed to go, because I went to Institute, and so I was supposed to go to Park. And I was a little hard-headed, so my dad says, no way in the world he's going to send me to another school when he was right down the street. So I ended up going to Stratton.
That's the same way when my son John, we live in the Stratton district, and I took him to Park. He had to sit out the first year that we were up there, and so I think he ended up playing midget youth football in 7th grade, but he couldn't wrestle or anything. And of course, John Boyden was your coach in wrestling.
Yes, he started me out. I guess I was probably about 5 or 6 when they had a little small program at the Y, and I'd won a lot of little tournaments, I guess, back then, but I never really even thought about wrestling. Really, it was just something to do when football wasn't around, or keep me out of trouble.
Yeah. Now, John coached for years. We called him Bobby when I was in school. We went to school together at Sylvia, and we always called him Bobby, but then he started going by John. But he used to have that green station wagon. He drove around. He'd have 20 guys in that thing sometimes. That's back before they had a seatbelt law. Right. But he was one of the forces that kept the youth wrestling going, and the time that he put in. When you got to Stratton Junior High, your dad was the coach then.
Dad was the coach, yes.
So football, wrestling, track.
Yes, like I said, my 7th grade year, I didn't do nothing but he just kept me close as a manager, and do everything the kid, go get the equipment. If not getting the equipment, get the water bottles, and not get the tape. And I did that for football, and then during wrestling season, I did basically the same thing. Track season, stood around and watched everybody doing everything, and then my 8th and 9th grade year, I got to participate. So then my 8th grade year, I football, wrestling, track, and basketball. And I would leave basketball practice and go right to the stage and go to wrestling practice. And, so that was just the way it was. I was going to try out and participate. It wasn't no stopping, it was all in or nothing.
We did that when I was at Park. We had a couple of guys, Timmy Justice and Mike Williams. They played football and wrestled, and they would wrestle with us for an hour and 15 minutes, then go to basketball practice. And by the end of the year, those guys were in tremendous shape. Man, they couldn't get tired. But you guys, I know when you were in the 9th grade, you guys beat us at Park. And we used to have some classic games with Stratton. Usually played them about the 6th game of the year. And I know you guys beat us. We won the next year. But even some of the games that we won several in a row then, but it was games like 8-6, 14-12. It was always close, come down to the last seconds of the ball game, and there was between the 3 junior highs, there were some pretty good athletes, feeding into Woodrow. When you got to Woodrow, Coach Colcerto was still the football coach. And I'd read somewhere where you thought about you wasn't going to wrestle in high school.
Yeah, I wasn't going to do anything but play football. Actually, I wasn't even going to go to Woodrow. I was going to go to Independence.
Oh, really?
And then, my dad convinced me to go to Woodrow. I had relatives all down at Independence, Ron Ward, Damon Harris, Andrew Durgan, all those relatives was down there. And at the time, Independence had a decent football team, and, we had played Sophia and a lot of those guys, Coal City and stuff when I was growing up in junior high. But, like I said, all my relatives were down there. So I was going to try to go to Independence, and I was just going to stay at my grandmother's. And my dad said, no, if you're going to play and you want to be the best, you got to play with the best. And he said it's not the point that the best athletes were always at AAA, but it was a broader spectrum. So I ended up going to Woodrow and playing ball. I wasn't going to do anything but play ball, and Zaffaratus and Coach Powell and Kevin Farley, every time they see me in the hallway or whatever, they kept messing with me and telling me, come to practice and see how it is or whatever. I did, and the rest is history, as they say, just.
Now, there were some athletes at Woodrow, but the 3 years that you were at Woodrow in football, I guess your best year might have been the junior year.
Yeah, my junior year. My sophomore year was Bull Parker's year, and they didn't do too good that year. And then my junior year was me and Terry Nichols, Odell was quarterback, and we had Dallas Cooper, Greg Robinson, Joe Dombey, Kevin Farley. We had a pretty strong team.
Yeah, and also in wrestling, you guys weren't bad either. Chet Tony and that bunch, and I think you guys finished 5th in the state that year. The top 5 teams was fairly close, Then your senior year, though, that kind of fell off a little bit.
Yeah, everything. I only played like 5 or 6 games my senior year in football. I had a calcium deposit in my thigh. Then I wasn't going to wrestle again, and ended up wrestling anyway. Did all right. I was doing well. I was trying to fight the demon between 185 and heavyweight. I wrestled maybe 8 matches at heavyweight, and then I was right there at the cusp. I mean, I was walking around probably weight at maybe 200, but never had no problem, to where I couldn't lose weight or whatever. So they convinced me to go back to 185, get to the States in one of the regions. So get to the States and semifinal match or whatever. The guy from Kaiser beat me 3-2. He ran the whole third period, so I ended up getting beat like 3-2. And then I had to wrestle the defending state champion in a consolation round, who had beat me the year before, Chris Swore. I ended up pinning him, got third that year or something like that. Yeah, my senior year, so.
After high school, you got recruited by Concord to play football.
Yes.
Who was the coach down there?
Marvin Williams.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure. And then he moved up.
Yeah, he went to, I think, South Carolina somewhere or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know whether he was there or Colabro was there.
Well, Colabro was there, still around too. He stayed around. He was, coaching not as a head coach. He was more or less an assistant or kind of, helping out and stuff. But it was Williams was the head coach at the time.
Yeah, Colabro used to call me sometimes when he was looking at certain kids around, and I felt honored because he was, respecting me enough to see what I thought of certain kids, and I was always honest with him. There were some kids I couldn't recommend, I'd tell him, and so I think it might have been why he kept calling. Now you started on defense at Concord, but you didn't graduate.
No, I started. I played a great deal as a freshman, all the special teams. Was second team on defense. Started as a sophomore. Played and continued to play all my special teams. My junior year, a whole lot of stuff fell apart. Had a new coach. Not only a new coach, but then we had a bunch of guys who hadn't played in 2 or 3 years come back, and because him and the coach were friends or whatever the reason was, things didn't work out. So I left the team, ended up going to the Army for like 2 years, ended up coming back home.
When you were in the Army, did you travel much?
I didn't travel as much as a lot of other people. I did my basic at Fort Jackson. From Fort Jackson, I went to Redstone, Austin, Alabama. From Alabama, I went to Eglin Air Force Base because I was into a specialty that I didn't finish. It was weird. I was still about 215, 220 pounds. And I was in this training where you had to take and put on a butyl rubber suit and walk about 20 yards and do a test and come back. But you have to do it in a time frame. Well, you got to realize to getting in this suit at 220 pounds, you have to get, it's a suit that you, a self-contained suit, which you have to, 2 other people to put you in the suit. So you get in the suit and everything's timed. So, you get me locked into the suit. And so I got to walk from here to maybe across the street, at the house across the street, do a test in the suit, and then come back. Well, I was never meeting the time requirements. So I told the cadre, I said, it's not me. As you see, I'm passing the test. It's just the point they can't get me in and out of the suit in time. And I had a cadre of Marine, Navy, Army, and Air Force there, and they was like, well, that can't be true. So they sent their sergeants down there to do it. And when the sergeants put me in the suit, the time was worse. But they said, well, you're still failing the test. So they ended up sending me to Fort Riley, Kansas, Junction City, Kansas, instead of Fort Riley. And I ended up going to Germany for a little while, something called Reforger, and then came back. When I came back, I was like, yeah. Then they found that I could wrestle. So the command sergeant major had a base tournament, and asked me to wrestle in it. I wrestled. I got second in the tournament, and he was wanting me to try out for the All-Army team, and I was like, no, I just went out. So I signed my paperwork and stuff and got out, and I didn't have any problems or anything getting out.
You came back home after you got out of the Army, and what'd you do when you came back home?
I came back home and worked for Presley Ridge part-time and drove back and forth to Concord to finish my degree.
Now, Presley Ridge, were you a counselor? Or
at the time, they called it a behavioral specialist, and then I was a family service coordinator or whatever they did, So it was basically a counselor for the kids and the family that adopted the foster children and things of that nature. I mostly dealt with just behaviors and writing plans and stuff for the kids to stay and maintain. Somewhere around the time you got into judo and karate and... Yes, I'd always been an enthusiast of the martial arts. I actually messed around with apparatus back in high school, doing a little bit of messing around, doing some judo throws and stuff with apparatus. And then it actually died down for a while. And once I came back home, Sensei Eugene Blankenship and Bug Stover were running a small knit group and teaching some classes, and got into it then. So I guess that's maybe 93, 92, somewhere in there. It kind of blossomed from there. I'd already had somewhat of an athletic background, wrestling and other things. So kind of just felt right into the niche.
Now they got you into competing some.
Yes. Yes.
Tell us about the trip to Chicago a little bit.
Chicago was a experience. We actually, unlike now, the rules were different for the cage, and we drove from West Virginia, me, Sensei Blankenship, and another friend of mine drove into Chicago and went to a old gym. It was like a gym like the old YMCA. It was a little bit bigger, but you go in and it was almost like a martial arts tough man competition. You didn't have days. Everything was done at one night. It was a $10,000 cash prize. You was in a boxing ring with a cage around it, and I fought one guy who was a Marine training sergeant for something, and I beat him. And then I fought the Russian national kickboxing champion, and I was actually beating him. I was just out of shape, and so he ended up winning that. And then he ended up getting beat by a guy who was on UFC named Pat Miltich. So, yeah, but it was an experience, just something different in life, I guess.
Now, is this about the time when you helped coach football at Liberty?
No, I had coached, when I was actually working for Press Ridge, I'd helped coach with Coach Jeff Alexander at Beckley Junior football. I was helping him coach a little bit there. And then I didn't coach for a long time. I coached a little bit at Stratton, assistant coaching for wrestling a little bit.
Now, John Rahal was telling me, I think you were coaching some when he was wrestling there a little bit.
Yeah. So then I It's kind of blurry. I think, I was just bouncing around a little bit. Then I actually went into working at the federal prison. So that's when.
And you got to work at this federal prison?
Yes, I worked here in Beckley for almost right at 2 years. Yeah, I was at the FCI behind the fence for about 6 months, and then I went down to the camp and worked at the camp. I worked in the psychology department, drug treatment and things of that nature. And then I transferred out to Las Vegas, Nevada, and was out there for right at 5 years or right under 5 years before I applied and went to the federal marshals.
Now, federal marshal, I don't know exactly what a federal marshal does. I know when something bad happens that you hear about them, but is there a federal marshal on every airplane?
No, so there's a difference. There's a federal marshal who does everything from court work to home rage, helps the ATF. It's like the FBI and things of that nature. Then you also have what I was doing is the federal air marshals, where everything we're based around transportation and airplanes, airports, and things of that nature. There's a lot of things that go on, in transportation around the world, and we were there to prevent another 9/11. The biggest thing is, everybody asks the same question: where is this? Where is that? And stuff like that. And rightfully, certain things you can't publish and put out because it'll defeat the purpose of having. But there's an algorithm that the government does or whatever to put certain people on planes, what planes not to go on, or things of that nature. So, it's a complex system, but it's a needed system. As you can see that, once they started thinking that we weren't on the planes and stuff, people started acting up again, getting drunk and doing things. And there's a lot of precautions that's been put in place since 9/11.
Now, I've never been a super well-traveled. I've flown on planes probably 10 times in my life. Farthest I've gone is Nevada. We went to Las Vegas one year. But I've never actually seen anybody act up on a plane. I've watched it. I've seen it on the internet, and these guys, and, I can't believe it's happened and stuff. But I mean, I've just never witnessed, and I'm glad I haven't. Right. And I've never... Actually, everybody I've ever sat beside of was nice and genial type of people. But do you think with the new administration we have in the country, do you think they'll cut back on that system? Or
with my opinion of this administration, I wouldn't put anything past them. I think that in my opinion, this administration has hurt this nation more than anything possible. I've been around the world probably twice and then some. And every time you go somewhere, you deal with other law enforcement and other people. And, the whole question is, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? And every time I've ever went somewhere, the man that we have in charge now has always been poor reputation. The worst they consider is the worst thing for our nation. I may spew a lot of things and stuff like that, but I talk from experience of being out of the country and listening to other people and talking. Part of my job as being, at the time, was surveillance and talking to people and paying attention to other people and stuff like that. You say you go to other countries and they talk about Americans because a lot of times Americans come to their country with an attitude and ungrateful or this, that, and everything else. But then, you put a man like this in charge, and it is magnified 10 or 15 times. So, it's sad. I think he's cutting away a lot of good people's jobs, hurting a lot of families. And the way he talks about it is, for economy cuts and things of that nature. And in my opinion, he's just a great grifter. He's just, and in my opinion, is, controversial the most. But then, I am in West Virginia. The population in West Virginia for minority is less than 30%. So that causes even a whole nother gamble.
Now you've got a PhD from Arizona.
Yeah, the University of Arizona Global Campus.
And how long were you in Arizona?
Well, I did most of it online because I was still working. I was still working and flying around the world. So
Okay.
I did everything online. I went there for 3 residencies. So you come in, you have to do residency weekends and things of that nature. Where you're in class the whole time and stuff like that. But so.
Now you teach at University of District of Columbia.
Yes.
What do you teach online? What do you teach there?
It really depends. I've taught everything from probation and parole to criminology, from investigations, juvenile justice, dynamics of the human behavior. They use me as needed because I'm an adjunct. When before the pandemic happened, I was working at the command center for the Air Marshal Service. Because where my schedule set up, I could go there in the morning and work on campus in the morning, and then in the evening I would go do my shift, for the Air Marshal Service. So I did that for 2 years then, and then once I retired, I went back to working online again.
Have you ever thought about coaching again since you've retired? Supposedly,
I've coached with Liberty football twice. The first year I came back in 22, I coached football with them. And then part of 23, I took a job in Clarksburg at the FBI center there. And that didn't work out. So I left and I came back and I coached with Liberty last year. I enjoy coaching. I actually applied for the assistant coaching position at West Virginia Tech for wrestling. I haven't heard anything back from that yet. I enjoy coaching. I'm definitely understanding that the children of today are definitely different than when we were kids. I guess I'm like my father in a way, if you're keeping score, it's about winning, and you got to have the discipline and the thought process of wanting to win and being the best you can be. And, one thing I love about wrestling and boxing and swimming, even though it's a team sport, but you're an individual in that team sport, So what you do is an accumulation of making that team win. So you may just be a penny, but if you get 100 pennies, you have $1. So that's where I look at it, wrestling and stuff of that nature. And a lot of kids don't look at it that way no more. A lot of parents don't look at it that way no more. If we were all as good as our parents thought we were, then we would all be professionals. So we have to understand our role at times, And I'm a firm believer that my dad used to say all the time, everybody's not going to understand how you run the ship. So either you get somebody to help you get everybody to run your ship in your capacity, or you have to fall back and have someone else work with that individual to get them to be a part of that ship. Yeah. So, coaching's it's a whole different dynamic. You work with the psychology of each kid. Not only each kid, you have to work with the psychology of the unit, and then you have to all try to progress together.
Well, I coached for several years. I coached football, wrestling, and track, and I have coached a little bit of Little League baseball and stuff like that. I'm not sure that I could coach nowadays, though, because some of the different drills and the teaching and the things, I'm not sure that the society has changed a lot. And I'm not sure that they could take my brand of coaching, or I could take, and now you got kids jumping teams and going to different schools. You got travel stuff. I mean, it's just, I think overall, you see some tremendous athletes out there, but I'm not sure what they're doing is the best thing for the sports, but I don't know. But the one thing that I like, the reason I got into coaching, and you were lucky, you had a mom and dad at home, you had a family structure, and my dad left when I was 5 years old, and there's a lot of kids out there like that. Right. Well, my first role model was Coach, and I was very fortunate because I had a great Little League baseball coach. I had great coaches in high school, but those were guys that I looked up to, whether they knew it or not. Man, I mean that was, and And there's a lot of kids out there, like there's kids today that the family structure, high percentage of families don't have a male in the family. And then there's more and more each day, the family structure is grandparents raising the kids.
Yes.
And it's so a coach's role is more important now than it's ever been, I think. I mean, you know more about that stuff than I do.
I definitely agree, and the sad thing about it is what I really hate more so than anything is that when I grew up, there were things to do. Like you say, you had the baseball coach, you had the football coach, you had the wrestling coach, you had some places had soccer and track and, things of that nature. And like you say, for that missing parent or that, what it was always something to do. I'm 54, I come out to Beckley, West Virginia, and really there's nothing to do. If you're not in season or if you're not on a team, what is it for the kid to do? Everybody can't afford the YMCA, but you need some kind of recreation, or you need some. I mean, in reality, you and your wife, other than going to a movie or going to a restaurant, what is it for you to do? And Beckley, people here in Beckley need to be aware of that. You worry about these kids getting in trouble, you worry about all the stuff that goes on around here, but if you give them things to do and provide them with some, a lot of things can happen. You can have a recreation center or something where it doesn't always have to be focused on sports, but you can have afternoon classes, you can have tutoring, you can do so many things, and you go to bigger cities and they always have that. You always have something for people to do. The kids who don't do stuff are the ones who usually are getting in trouble doing other things, but you can usually weed that group out. The group just trying to excel or whatever is always some kind of program, some kind of structure, something to be going on. And sports can be that structure, after school tutoring can be that structure, robotics, computer science, anything can be that structure. Podcasting can be that structure, but we don't have that around here. Nobody does that around here.
Another thing too, a lot of the families have ceded their authority over to the school system. They want the school system to raise the kids. I mean, they feed them, they clothe them, medicate them. It's the schools were not designed originally to do that.
You're right. Schools have become a babysitter, a recreation program, all that. And you see that, I talked to my brother. My brother coaches at both Liberty and at Woodrow Wilson. One for football and one for track. And, he talks about, some parents never pick up, never take their kid, never come see their kid play, and it's just like you drop them off and expect this kid to do whatever, but without no guidance or structure whatsoever, he's going to fall by the wayside. Like you say, the coach becomes the parent and becomes the whatever, he got the transportation, he got the, and so it's kind of scary when in these days, these times, it's really scary.
Absolutely. Now you have been outspoken on some things. I've seen a few things on the internet, that you give your opinion, and I respect that. One of the things, one of the nicest schools that we have around now is Stratton Elementary, the new Stratton Elementary. Yes. But you actually didn't want the old building torn down, did you?
There is no reason why we as a community should have taken down that main building. Okay, you could have built the structure or anything around behind it, but what has been done is they've desecrated the football field. The football field was one of the first structures owned by a black man that was donated. You don't have, the aspect of one of the last schools we segregated was Stratton High School. They let a lady come in there and she got rid of all the trophies, all the homecoming queens and everything. All that's history. And you don't have, you have a section of the city where they always talk negatively about it. In the newspapers or this, that, or whatever the case may be. But now you don't have anything for any of these kids to look at, and anything for these kids to say they grew up to, or this, whatever. You have Park Junior High School, whose basically school was split in half, but they found money and stuff to put, air conditions and heaters and to rebuild rebuild the gymnasium, but they couldn't find, money to do the same thing for Stratton High School. Or even the fact of the matter is, even if you don't, you can still build around it, but even if you take time enough to have just that main building, that could have been a historical site. You could have kept the gym, could have been a recreation center in the gym. You could have used the classrooms and stuff just on that one building, the main heart building, and you could use those classrooms for tutoring, you could use those classrooms for other things. But you don't destroy one of the few things that has had Black representation for the city.
Yeah.
And it's just sad.
And you weren't really old enough, you weren't around when they consolidated, which really wasn't consolidated, but Stratton and Woodrow Wilson. I was in the first graduating class from the new Woodrow Wilson, and that was when the Stratton students were brought over. Well, I had gone to school, Sylvia School, for 8 years, and it was one of the first integrated schools in the county, and so I was familiar with a lot of those guys. But the first year, they never changed the name. They didn't bring anything from Stratton. There were no school colors, nothing. Some of the people that I had classes with in the 12th grade had gone to Stratton their whole high school career, and then they were brought over the last year, and they didn't want to be there,
right?
And they didn't have the allegiance, and seriously, years later, they still don't. I mean, they don't feel allegiance to Woodrow Wilson; they feel allegiance to Stratton High School, and there was a form of bitterness. Some of my best friends today that were in that situation still have a bitterness about how they did things. And so, I mean, I sympathize with them, and I didn't. Then a few years later, they started trying to do some things, Miss Afro and things like that. But it wasn't given much thought when they just pulled them over and said, this is where you're going. And I was on 3 sports teams at that time. We got along the sports guys got along pretty good. I don't remember any kind of issues or anything like that, but so the general public didn't necessarily all the time. You have spoken some on the internet on human rights and politics and things like that, and the political situation that's out there now. I'm an old man and I'm confused. I don't know who to believe. I don't know. I mean, everybody gets on, makes a statement, and, well, according to this and according to that, well, and so in my particular stance, I've almost took a form of apathy. I just want to live in peace and serenity.
and in reality, that's what I think everybody would want. I guess from the fact of the matter for me, being in law enforcement for 25 years, most years of my life, how can we have representation of a man who has 34 felonies sitting in office? That's my biggest thing. That's one of the biggest things. And then, how can we have a man who's supposed to be representing the United States who has had countless times where he's been caught up in situations that's been less than, representation of the United States. They talk about how he's done this, how he's done that. He's going to change it to a business aspect of the United States. But here's a man who's had 6, 7 bankruptcies. Anybody that can bankrupt a casino should not be running this country. Anybody who has 34 felonies is a poor representation. If you had 34 felonies, if you had 34 misdemeanors, you couldn't do nothing. So yet and still, while you have 34 felonies and haven't represented this country, most people with a 1 felony can't go to another country. So how are you gonna be a president and go? You can't go to Japan. You can't go to the United Kingdom. You can't go to Ireland. Why? Because you got felonies. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, they may make some exceptions, but he don't just have 1. He has 34.
Have you ever thought about running for office? Of course, nowadays, I'm going to assume that you're a Democrat.
I don't consider myself a Democrat. I don't consider myself a Republican. I'm just a citizen who has feelings towards certain things. A lot of people want to say conservative and liberal. All that, it doesn't matter. If you are a decent individual who is representing the country or representing your city or your state or your community in a positive nature that's going to try to help benefit all the citizens and not just one, then that's who I am. That's who I'm for, And to be honest with you, like I said, I tell very few people this, but at 54, this was the first year in my entire life that I even voted.
Really?
Yes, because after working inside the federal prisons and seeing councilmen, senators, bank managers, bank owners come in those prisons, I thought they were all just crooks and criminals.
Probably most of them
were. Probably, you're right, which probably most of them were. But, that was my thing. I wouldn't vote because I thought they were all criminals and crooks. And, but then we come to this year and we have a guy who is just, I couldn't not sit back and not do something. So whether it was small or minute didn't mean anything, I had to vote. So I went ahead and voted this year, you know what I'm saying? Running for office, when I first came home, believe it or not, people said I should have tried to run for sheriff. No. Then I've told that people said I should have been trying to run for mayor or, a councilman. Mr. Bennett, a lot of times people get intimidated around me because I'm direct. And I'm just honest to what I feel and I'm passionate about what I do. If I'm direct, it's not because I dislike you or because it's just how I feel and or what I feel is the facts, and if you prove me wrong, then I respect that and then we can move on, but a lot of politicians don't do that. And Beckley is, from what I can see, is starting to become garbled with people who are saying they're doing a lot, but nothing is happening. It's not, Beckley is a small town, small city, small state. West Virginia is a small state, and you have a lot of people who have not been nowhere other than West Virginia or have not done much other than West Virginia. And they got to realize there's lots of things that's going on and things are moving around them. And yes, it all takes money, but anytime something happens in Beckley, West Virginia, you get a new restaurant, you get a new car dealership, or you get a new bank, but you don't get nothing for the kids. You don't get nothing for the entertainment aspect. And, we sit here and we got people talk about the homeless problem we have. Well, Charleston, Huntington, all those places have ordinances or something like that to deal with panhandling, to deal with the homelessness. And then what they do is they either arrest them, put them in jail, and then give them $72 and put them on a bus. And then where's the first stop at? Beckley, West Virginia. They get off Beckley, West Virginia, they go to McDonald's and don't get back on the bus.
Yeah. Of course, everybody's got ideas, and Beckley has. I've lived in Beckley all my life, and I would love to see the town prosper. And I have done a lot of volunteer work in my life, but not as much in the last few years because of health reasons. But again, I think sometimes people that get into office, there are some that when they get in there are actually honest, good people, but after they're in there a while, they seem to turn, Right. But what you didn't answer my question. Or would you consider running?
I couldn't consider running. I seen one position. I actually applied for the city manager's position. I think just to see what happened. I never heard anything about. I would maybe probably with the right backing, maybe think about a mayor position, do the mayor. But other than that, I wouldn't do anything politics. I'm not a politician. I'm not the flavor of the month. I'm not that type of person.
Yeah.
I've learned to, and like you say, it comes with maturity. Like you say, that being a coach now is not the same way it would be when you were first coaching. And I remember you coaching, or being at the corner of the mat. I remember you telling, you shoot the shoot, keep shooting it, and don't worry about him running off the way. Shoot him, shoot that takedown, and that's the kind of person I am, on the aspect of politics. We would have they have the town meetings and things and that. But, if you want Beckley to prosper, you have to have people involved and people who care. And like a person like you is a person who's been here for his life and who cares, who's volunteered, he's moved. You probably moved hundreds of kids through the school system. You've hundreds of kids through sports and things of that nature. So they know that you care. You've been there. But they don't do enough brainstorming. They don't do enough talking to the community. And then they leave certain communities out. And it's just things that you have to do to be prosperous. And you have more than enough money here to do stuff, but you still have the good old boy network working. If you don't have the good old boy network working, then well, we really don't know if that's going to work. Well, if you don't try it, you'll never know it's going to work.
You're right. What's on your bucket list? What's something that you haven't done that you would like to do? Maybe something selfish.
Yeah, I would love to lose about 150 pounds and get a parachute and jump out of a plane. I haven't done that yet. I would like to enter some shooting competitions and probably just go back to traveling. I miss traveling. I miss being in, actually I really miss being in Germany a lot, in Europe a lot. I miss seeing the marvels of Dubai when they change things and do things big in Dubai. I miss my parents greatly. I've always missed my mom and my dad. Me and my brother have a very good relationship. I've been to 47 states out of the United States. I like to get all 50. Small things. I'm not really, hitting a lottery would be nice, but if I couldn't share it and have a couple nice big parties for everybody, then money would go to waste. I want to change. I want to change the image of West Virginia. I want to change the image of Beckley. Maybe not West Virginia, but definitely Beckley. Being a black man and traveling and stuff, and you tell somebody where you're from, and then you say West Virginia, and the first thing they say is, there are no black people in West Virginia. So, that image needs to change. People don't even know the history, the small history of West Virginia. The reason why West Virginia became West Virginia is because they wanted to get away from the slave trade. They split the states. Virginia was still a commonwealth that was dealing in the slave trade, and West Virginia was trying to get away from that. West Virginia had all these workers from Irish to Mexicans, and everybody came to work in the coal mines, but people don't understand that, there was a split there, and, you have to get that voice back, you got to be positive.
Well, even back in the coal mining days, of when you had coal camps and things, there was a division. I mean, some of the bigger camps, the Italians lived in one section, yes. The blacks lived in one section, the yes. Irish lived in a section, and they had their only little community with, even though they worked together, right. They had their own little community within a community. It's interesting. Well, I'm hoping that you stay involved. I hope you stay around Beckley, and we feel fortunate, and we'll get there. I appreciate you. You mentioned a gun. You've taught a gun. You've been teaching a gun classes.
Yes, I usually do a gun safety course. It's a preliminary course for those people who want to go to the Sheriff's Department concealed weapons course. The state of West Virginia, you can carry open carry a weapon, but as soon as you conceal that weapon, then you're outside the law. So that means you walk around with the weapon on your side as everybody can see it. But as soon as you pull your shirt over that or you put your coat over that and it's concealed, now you're outside the parameters of the law. So, I teach this gun safety course, and you receive the certificate from me. You take it to the Raleigh County Sheriff's Department, and then they run the background check on it, make sure you don't have any felonies, no domestic violence, things of that nature. And then you can get you a concealed weapons permit, which is good for 5 years. So I do the preliminary course of that, and I try to give people as much knowledge as I may have, dealing with weapons and dealing with, guns of that nature. Just to let you know, I have over 25,000 hours of training from the federal government, everything from active shooter to, emergency medical, pistol training, rifle training, so there's, deal of knowledge that I have. And I'm a firm believer if you don't, push out that knowledge, then you'll lose it, So I'm trying to make people aware, because we also have the council doctrine in the state of West Virginia. If someone walks into your home and you tell them to leave, they don't leave, you can take whatever force is necessary to feel your protection, especially if someone's threatening you or threatening your family, you have the right to protect yourself.
Yeah.
So, people need to be aware of those things.
Well, Stephon Ross, I'm glad you stopped by, and I've enjoyed talking to you, and you're welcome to come back anytime.
Well, anytime you have me, I'll be back. I really enjoyed it, Mr. Bennett, and then, I really appreciated being inducted into the Hall of Fame. I really appreciated that.
Good deal. And anybody else out there that would like to be on our program, you can hit me up at awbennett50@gmail.com, and we'll get you on here. And remember, until next time, if you're not dead yet, you're not done yet. And this is Wayne Bennett, and God bless you.